Are you looking to improve your Chinese reading or writing capabilities? If so, stay tuned to learn these essential Chinese radicals which all Chinese learners should know.
Everyday Easy Chinese.
大家好，我是 Everyday Easy Chinese 的林老师 and today you'll be learning essential Chinese radicals that all Chinese learners should know. Now, if you're not sure of what a radical is, they are called 部首 in Chinese. And what they are is that in a Chinese character, they are a component that can be found in the upper, left hand, right hand, or lower part of the character. And this helps categorize different characters into similar meanings. Now, once you get familiar with radicals, then you'll be able to guess the meaning of new words by just looking at that radical, and you'll be able to easily memorize how to write new words which are associated with that particular radical. So before we start, remember to give us a like as this will help us produce more content going forward. Let's start. The first radical we'll look at is shan. This is known as the mountain or the 山字旁 radical. Now, the 山字旁 radical can often be found on the upper, the left-hand side, or the lower part of a character. And obviously, it is associated or has originations to do with mountains. So the first character that we have with the shan radical is this one. Dao. Dao. Dao means island. Now, if you look closely at this word, you can see that on top we have the character for bird, which is niao. And then underneath it, we have the shan radical. And a fun fact here is that historically, islands are formed from volcanic eruptions, some of them, and so they're very mountainous. Back in the old days, only birds can easily fly to the top of the mountains on the islands because they're surrounded by lots of water, right? And that's why you can see the niao on top of a shan, which is the mountain. The niao was also placed in there for phonetic reasons too. Now the second character that we have with shan is feng. So feng means the peak of the mountain. And you can see that this time the radical is on the left hand side of the character. The third character we have is tan. Tan. This means charcoal, and charcoal is mainly sourced from within the mountains, and that's why it is with the shan radical. Number 2, so the second radical we have is shui. So this is the water or 三点水 radical. So obviously these characters all have something to do with water, and this radical can be found on the left hand side of a character. Let's look at a few characters with this radical. The first one is he. He means river, which has lots of water, of course. Now the second one we have is liu. Liu means to flow like water. And the third one we have is han. Han, which means sweat. So when we sweat from our bodies, it's water, right? So all three of these characters have the 三点水 as a radical, and as you can see, they are all associated with water. Number 3, 土. So this is known as the earth radical or the 提土旁. And this radical obviously has something to do with earth or the soil. However, please note that not all characters with this radical has this meaning. When you look at characters with this radical, you'll often see it on the left-hand side or the lower side of the character. Let's look at a few characters with the radical 提土旁. So the first one that we have is 地. 地 means the ground. The second one we have is 基. 基 which means foundation or base, such as when you say 基础. And the third one we have is 城. 城 means city, and obviously you need earth or soil to build up a city. So 城市 would be city. So as you can see, all three of these characters have the 提土旁 radical, and they all require earth or soil to make up. Number 4, 火. This is the fire or 火字旁 radical, and as you may have guessed, these characters with this radical often have something to do with fire. So you'll find this radical normally on the left hand or the lower part of the character. Let's look at some characters with the 火字旁 radical. The first one we have is 灯. 灯 means light or lamp. And as you may know, historically, lights or lamps were lit by a flame, so with fire, and that's why there's the radical in it. Number 2, the second one is 烧. 烧 means to burn or to cook. And obviously you need fire to burn or cook something, and that's why we have the radical in here as well. And finally, the third one we have is 灾. 灾 means disaster. For example, 火灾 means a fire disaster. Now, as you can see, with all three of these characters, you need a fire to start all of them, and that's why you can associate anything with the 火 radical with fire. Number 5, 石. This is the rock or 石字旁 radical, and obviously any character with this radical has something to do with rocks. Now this radical can usually be found on the left hand side of a character. Let's look at a few words with this 石字旁 radical. So the first one we have is 沙. 沙 means sand. As you can see, we have a 石字旁 radical here, and then next to it we have 少. 少 means little, a small amount, and essentially sand is tiny fragments of rock. So that's why if we put these together, it becomes 沙. The next one we have with the 石字旁 radical is 硬. 硬 means hard, and obviously rocks are very hard, and that's why 硬, hard, is associated with it. Finally, the third one that we have is 砖, which means brick. And it's obvious because you need rocks to build bricks, right? So as you can see, the three characters here again are related and associated to 石, rock. So that's it for today, where we looked at 5 top radicals to do with nature. So we looked at the 山字旁, the 三点水, the 提土旁, 火字旁, and 石字旁. So by learning these radicals, you'll be able to easily identify the meanings of new words that you don't know, and also remember how to write words associated with these characters. If you enjoyed the lesson, please help us by pressing the like button and also subscribe to the channel, as these tiny actions will help us to continue producing more Chinese content for you. See you next time.